Hey guys, I'm Kendra Sommer and welcome back to my channel. Today we're in Los Angeles, California, checking out a private collection that includes Preston Tucker's personal Tucker.
The Tucker 1031 is the car that I own.
Now, before Eric tells us how he got Preston's Tucker, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss any of the cool content that we produce. The Tucker Corporation built the Tucker 48, also known as the Tucker Torpedo. With only 51 Tuckers ever made, whenever one of these cars ventures to the auction block, it creates an event, with vehicles selling up to $2 million.
George Lucas, who made the movie Tucker, telling the Tucker story, starring Jeff Bridges, owned 2 of these cars.
His automotive vision for a new car company really rattled the big 3 in Detroit. Tucker was the first to advertise a safe vehicle for your family, introducing the seatbelt, roll bars, side impact protection, padded dashboards, and pop-out windshields with safety glass. Unfortunately, everything came crashing down for Tucker after a lawsuit, poor financial planning, and several other items, which we'll cover in today's story. Stick around.
Story. Here was a guy in 1948 or 1946 is when he first started really looking for money to build his dream car, but he was a guy who had great ideas and wanted to revolutionize the automotive industry.
So whose suitcase is this, Tucker?
So Tucker actually he was indicted on fraud charges for selling parts for cars that didn't exist, and the parts were the luggage and the radios. That's what they got him on. Okay. And so they alleged that he was selling these accessories, but what he did was, again, much like Tesla, it was a lottery. In order to get your name in the lottery to buy a Tucker, if you bought the luggage and the radio, that got you into the lottery to buy the car. Just like Tesla, to get your order in on the 3. Like, there's so many parallels in that. I don't sit here and think about this stuff just off the cuff. I'm like, God, there really are a lot of parallels between Tucker and Tesla. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But this is actually a piece of Tucker luggage that I just got from this collection. And it came in its original box, which is really, really rare.
Where did Tucker go wrong?
They made blueprints. So some people say, oh, Tucker was a fraud. He was just taking the money. He made, I think it was about $23 million of an IPO in the 40s, which is probably $200 million in our money today. And some people say, oh, he took the money and ran. Well, if he took the money and ran, he sure developed in those 2 years, 1947 and 48. He developed thousands of blueprints. He set up 2,000 plus dealers around the country to sell the Tucker. So the concept that Preston Tucker was a fraud is just so then you say, well, okay, then why were they after him? Well, I think they were concerned that he was going to move the tax basis from Michigan, where the big 3 were located and all the taxes for making cars, everything was generated in Michigan. He got the world's biggest plant at the time, the Dodge plant in Chicago, Illinois. And he was going to make cars in Chicago, Illinois, and that would have moved the whole industry. And so I think the government in Michigan, the senators panicked and said, if this guy's successful, he's really going to put a big kibosh in our plan. So I think they filed fraud charges against him, and of course he was found not guilty of his fraud charges, and the rest is history. Mm-hmm. But by the time he had finished the fraud defending himself, he was broke and the company was out of business and he didn't have the funds to restart it. That was why after he was found not guilty, he wasn't able to reboot.
Because he missed a lot of the deadlines for orders?
2 years of fighting for your life, they wanted to put him in jail for fraud. So 2 years and probably millions of dollars in legal fees to fight for your life against the government, and then to be found, to be acquitted on the charges, and then, you're kind of penniless and having to start over. It's a pretty, I'm sure it was a very difficult situation. When Tucker wanted to sell you a dealer franchise, he had this thing created, this little easel up that he'd set on your desk, and he'd sit there and show you his 100-and-something page presentation about how opportunity is knocking at your door, and this is how he would sell his franchise. And he sold over 2,000 franchises in 47, 48. He was really ready to go. If he had started to produce cars, he would have been popping out thousands of cars a year.
And your Tucker was actually in the movie, right?
The car had never really been on the West Coast except one time, except when it came for the principal photography on the movie. It was in the movie, so it was in California in the late 80s for the shoot. I never would have known about the Tucker story if it hadn't been for Francis Ford Coppola, who in 1987 started principal production on Tucker, A Man in His Dream, with starring Jeff Bridges. And I'm not sure if you know or not, but Francis Ford Coppola optioned the rights for that movie because his father was going to be a Tucker dealer and lost his money in the 40s on trying to be a Tucker dealer. And so I think that stayed with Coppola all those years, and when he got the chance, That movie was in his mind for many, many years.
So did the family have any involvement in the movie?
The family were technical consultants on the script and on the production.
It's always so cool to see cars that were props in movies because, you know, everybody's like, oh, well, this gotta be like so nice inside.
Coppola, what's really wild about this is that Coppola paid Tom Sparks, who was a movie prop guy,
Right.
To build 4 cars for the movie. And he gave him, Coppola gave him his car number 14, and they dismantled car number 14 and made molds of the whole entire car so that they could make fiberglass molds to make the 4 replicas.
So we're all dying to know, how did you get your car?
So after the company went into receivership, Tucker acquired 2 cars. He acquired number 29 and number 31. And 29 he quickly sold, but 31 he kept until he died. He died in 1956. After he died, the wife, Vera Tucker, held on to the family car. It was in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where they were from, at their house in the barn where he did most of the designs for the car in the barn in the back. Tucker 31 sat until a family friend who was interested in being part of the legacy came to Mrs. Tucker. And at the time, 1962, 1963, I guess she really didn't want to sell the family car, but it had some inspiration too, financially, I'm guessing. So she sold that car in 1962 to a gentleman in Elk Point, South Dakota. And it sat there for the next 40 some odd years until I sent him a letter asking him if he was interested in selling the car. And he had passed away, but his kids were interested in finding somebody that could carry on the legacy of 31. So I went to Elk Point, South Dakota, met the family, introduced myself. They were originally Studebaker dealers, and at that time in our collection we had some Studebakers, so we found some common ground. And it was it's been a pleasure to preserve the family car from the Tucker family car, and then, like I say, it went right to Mr. Busker and his family, and it was enshrined in his little garage for 40 some odd years.
What's the story with this Waltz blue? I know that was a big plot point in the movie.
Painted the same. It was always Waltz blue, which was Vera Tucker, the wife. It was a color of her dress. That was a story from the movie. She had a dress, and the color of the car was going to be her dress. So that's a true story. It's called Waltz blue. The car was repainted in Waltz blue for the movie. I guess it had just faded over the years.
Is it hard finding people to work on these motors? I mean, it's not your run-of-the-mill engine.
We had an expert rebuild the motor because they're aircraft motors, so you can't just send that out to a Chevy crate guy and say, here, rebuild my Tucker Franklin helicopter motor. So there's only a couple specialists that'll do helicopter motors. So we had the motor rebuilt. We've done things like replace fuel lines that have rotted out, maintenance things. But by and large, it's a very true car. Preston Tucker's cigar burns are burnt into the steering wheel, the Bakelite of the steering wheel. So it's a very true to what it is car.
I guess what happened to the people who bought in for the dealerships?
The dealerships, it was about between $2,000 and $4,000 to buy your space in Tucker history. To write out your check to Preston Tucker and become an authorized or a franchise dealer. And I think there were a lot of lawsuits around that time in the 40s. I think that what's happened now is they make great collections. Like we acquired a collection a few years ago from a dealer in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And for his $3,000, he got a accounting manual, a couple of pieces of luggage, and some order forms. And that was the legacy of Latrobe, Pennsylvania Tucker dealers.
And where's the family today?
Did that situation that happened back in the 40s, does that still affect the family today? I mean,
well, I certainly can't speak for the family, but I can tell you that I know them very well. They're very nice people. Most of the family is based in Arizona. There's one daughter, Shirley Tucker, who's still alive from the day. There were 5 Tucker children. There's one that's still around. And I can tell you that they're pretty private people in the sense that there's been so much rumors and so much misinformation about the Tucker story and the Tucker family that the family's very nice, but they're also very private. And 51 cars, 47 are remaining. Every single one of those 47 are different because they were all prototypes. They were all hand-built prototypes. So there's no 2 Tuckers that are alike.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We drop videos Mondays and Fridays, and I'll see you on the next one, cruisers.